Good evening, everyone. I'm going to call the meeting to order, and we'll start this evening, as we usually do, with a land acknowledgement. Councillor Killen is coming in virtually. Wait a minute. Councillor Sullivan, here he comes, so we're all together. All right, I'm going to read the land acknowledgement. The land on which the city of St. John, or Mennequist, is situated is the traditional territory of the Wolastoqiyik. The Wolastoqiyik, along with their indigenous neighbors, the Mi'kmaq and Pescatomakati, signed peace and friendship treaties with the British Crown in the 1700s that protected their rights to lands and resources. So let us take a minute to reflect on those words. I'd ask everyone to please stand for the national anthem. Okay, this is new and hot off the press, folks. And that's thank you to St. John High for that rendition, which was just recorded last week, and Patricia Gallagher, who is the lead of the choir at St. John High. Okay, City Clerk, next item. Oh, I have a few opening remarks before we get started. So good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. I want to do a quick reminder of the occupancy limits, and I have to do this. At our council chamber, the occupancy limit is 94 people. We have extra seats in the lobby to accommodate more. And if all the seats in the chamber are occupied, people will be asked to take a seat in the lobby. That's the fire marshal's regulations. Before reopening the public hearing, I want to just go over a few things. Firstly, I want to thank everyone who's come repeatedly. This will be night 3. I appreciate your interest and your dedication to your community. And so far on this land use application, council has heard from 56 individuals who spoke against the application over 9.5 hours of public hearings spread over 2 evenings. Tonight is the continuation of the same public hearing. As I mentioned at the start, on May 12th, the city's procedural bylaw provides that each member of the public is allotted a max of 10 minutes to address council at a public hearing. This requirement will be enforced. This also means that a person who has already addressed council during the 2 previous evenings of the public hearing on May 12th and May 20th may not address council again this evening. And we've got the list. We're just keeping a running list of who's been up to speak. So far in this public hearing, what we've tried to do is amalgamate some of the comments and some of the highlights so that we are all aware of what we have heard and so we're looking for new information as we go forward. So far, we've heard that there have been issues, and this is just a regurgitation of what has been said and that what we've been keeping a track of, what's come from the public. Issues with the overall process, including the timelines, the engagement, and the community liaison report. Opposition to the heavy industrial designation and expansion of the primary development area. Industrial land use doesn't bring a great tax base. The need to tax existing industry and invest in social programs. Insufficient job creation and/or job creation should be non-industrial sectors. Another site should be selected. There is sufficient industrial land for sale already. Preserve the rural residential settlement and allow residential expansion in the area. There's impact to quality of life. Past decisions, including the landfill and expropriation by the province that have impacted residents. Use the site for tourism and ecotourism. Loss or impact to wetlands and watercourses. Loss of biodiversity. Environmental impacts of proposed land uses. Light and noise pollution. Issues with the EIA process and provincial oversight through the WAWA and EIA process. The 150 meter is an insufficient buffer. Loss of trees. Impact to water wells, including lack of hydrology study, contamination, and groundwater recharge. Water monitoring. Public safety, including separation distances, chemical storage/leaks, explosions, and single access route. Who will clean up chemical spills if the company goes bankrupt? Public health concerns, including higher cancer rates in St. John, increased traffic, and not enough raw water. So so we've listed 23 bullets from the 50 speakers, the 50 plus speakers that we've had. So we will not allow speakers to speak if they want to just repeat the comments that have already been made by others. We're looking for new information. If a speaker's comments are the same as comments which have already been made, they are welcome to come down to the podium, state their name and address, and say that they oppose the application for the reasons already stated. Your name and your address goes into the public record. And so tonight, as we get started, I would like to start with residents from Laurenville, because I've heard some people from Laurenville say that we haven't had an opportunity to speak yet. It's been 2 nights. So I want to hear from Laurenville. This team would like to hear from the Laurenville residents first to ensure that Laurenville's voice is heard. So from the Laurenville residents. Okay, so City Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a couple items to deal with before we get back into the public hearing. So the first would be the approval of the agenda.
On the question, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
And next is disclosures of conflict of interest, if we have any.
Seeing none?
And now the item we're here for, 4.1 on the agenda. It's the continuation of the public hearing with respect to Spruce Lake Industrial Park expansion. And it's a continuance from May 20th, 2025.
All right, so I don't need a lifting. We're just going to go right ahead. Okay, so I'm going to call for the first speaker for the evening from Laurenville. Come on down, give us your name and your address.
Michael Lynch from 838 Laurenville Road.
All right.
So, a question I want to ask is, are we building a future for our community or selling it off to corporations that don't care if we thrive or suffer? I'm Michael Lynch. I'm an immigrant and a proud Canadian citizen by choice. I love this country and this province, this city, and my community of Laurenville. Okay, firstly, Mayor, councillors, I want to completely debunk any assumptions that you have about ongoing employment numbers. I'm not talking about construction, because that's going to be temporary, but ongoing employment numbers. Councillor Harris, Brent, you've often talked about the fact that you want industry so that your offspring, of which there are several, congratulations, by the way, will have jobs here in St. John, right? And some of you... Hold on, can you quote that? Where are you putting that from? Oh, you said that often. You said that at our community meetings. Yeah. I didn't say that.
Councillor Harris, actually, if you would just, I don't want to get into this sort of thing already. I know, I understand. No.
That's not what I said. So.
Okay, do you want to give us what you want to give us for facts there? And then we'll just continue.
All right, okay. All right. Well, I would like to submit to you that if you think any ongoing jobs will be created by brand new industrial facilities in Laurenville, then your head is still in the 1990s or possibly further back. Because new manufacturing facilities do not employ local people. They're fully automated, they're robotic, and they're remotely monitored by staff from the Philippines or India or wherever labor is cheap. This is how things work in 2025. If it sounds like science fiction to you, then you need to take a trip outside of St. John and see for yourself. There's no jobs, no opportunities, just machines and profits for executives thousands of miles away. Now, is that the future that we want? Okay, another possible industry mentioned was data centers. Again, data centers don't employ local people. I've worked in many, many data centers around the world, completely remotely from my home office. This is how data centers have worked for the past 15 years. Servers are virtualized. They don't need people to operate them because the software runs on virtual machines and they can be spun up, scaled, relocated, reconfigured in nanoseconds automatically or by a remote operator, usually someone in the Philippines. So, no local jobs created. Let's talk about power and pollution, though, since we're talking about data centers. Take a look at Elon Musk's AI data center in Louisiana, which is so power hungry, it has to have its own generators. And those generators are polluting the atmosphere with carcinogenic toxins and affecting the health of people that are living there for miles around. Now, you might say, well, we've got environmental regulations. Yeah, well, we've heard that before. They're toothless regulations enforced by spineless government departments who always have a conflict of interest because they want the tax dollar, and the minister doesn't want to be the one to shut down an opportunity. I get it. So I want you to understand that you can bet your bottom that any company spending in the billions on a facility will not be putting people in it. And they may use every bit of leeway they have with regard to environmental damage in order to make the highest profit. If you still don't believe me about the level of automation in modern industrial facilities, well, we all know at least a few people who work at J.D. Irving. Right, so you ask them about their Atlanta, Georgia facility. It's completely automated, no one works there. Right, and that's a modern manufacturing facility, no jobs. And Councillor Harris, I think your children deserve better than empty promises. They deserve real opportunities, not corporations squeezing profit from our land while giving nothing in return. Those corporations don't care about anything except the almighty dollar. That's why we have to care. It's our city and it's our community. The second thing I wanted to say was that when I became a Canadian citizen, I had to study and I had to take a test. And I learned a few interesting things on that test, which maybe you don't know if you were born a Canadian and you didn't have to study for it, right? So Canadian citizens have a significant role in protecting the environment. This includes avoiding waste and pollution, conserving natural resources, and promoting sustainable practices to protect Canada's natural heritage for future generations. You see, we as Laurenville residents are doing our part as good Canadian citizens to try to protect our environment. So, Mayor and Councillors, I'm asking you for two things tonight. Reevaluate whether you think this decision is fiscally responsible, ignoring any promises of local jobs. So if it's just the tax revenue, is it worth it? Because there won't be any jobs, there's no guarantee. And the second thing I'm asking you is, please ask yourself if you're fulfilling your obligation as a Canadian to protect the environment. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. I'll take the next speaker from Laurenville, please. Is there no other speakers from Laurenville?
Well, I'm not from Laurenville.
No, I want to hear from the speakers from Laurenville first.
Okay.
So I want to make sure that Laurenville gets heard, because what we have heard is that Laurenville is not being heard. So I need the speakers from Laurenville to come first. I'm going to call 3 times for the speakers from Laurenville. That's what we're hearing as a council. We're hearing that from people on the street to say that we have had to leave because the meeting has gone too long. We can't stay there all night. We wanted to speak, blah, blah, blah. So I'm saying tonight, Laurenville, I want to hear from Laurenville first. We'll hear from everyone who wants to speak, but I want to hear from Laurenville first. So what's out in the chamber out there, they will absolutely be able to hear this. So if there's any speakers out in the other room from Laurenville, we'll take those. Just want to make sure that Laurenville is heard first.
Hey, I'm Deanna Allen. I live at 1677 Laurenville Road.
Deanna Allen? Dina?
Yeah,
Allen?
Deanna. I'm not going to give a speech because everybody's already said everything that I would have said. But I do have a speech here from somebody that was here the last couple of weeks and couldn't be here tonight. So I'm going to try this, and I hope that it's going to work. It's a recording.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah Galbraith, and I live at 1435 Laurenville Road. I appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight and to add my voice in opposition to the Spruce Lake Industrial Park expansion. I apologize for not speaking in person, but I had to work this evening. I echo the concerns already raised, and while I'll avoid repeating them, I'd like to build on what my sister Katrina shared last meeting and offer my own lived experience and perspective. Both my partner and I work in high-stress, emotionally demanding fields. My partner has spent the past 9 years in public safety, often witnessing violence, crisis, and tragedy. I've worked in human services for 7 years, with the past 4 on homelessness and housing. My role constantly shifts, from social worker to crisis manager to PSW, and like my partner, I have seen trauma firsthand: street violence, addiction, domestic abuse, and death. Even my father, now retired, served as a Marine first responder and has carried his own share of traumatic experiences. These are not abstract concepts for us. They're daily realities. Why is this relevant to tonight's discussion? Because for people like us, and for many others in Laurenville, the ability to come home to a peaceful, natural, and quiet environment is not a luxury. It's a necessity. Our mental health, our recovery from work, and our overall well-being rely on that calm. At the end of a difficult day, my partner and I step onto our deck and hear the bell buoy near the wharf. We watch ducks float in with the tide at Marsh Creek, which runs through our backyard. These moments keep us grounded. They restore us. This is not just about preference. It's about mental health, resilience, and quality of life for those of us who call this community home. And that peace is directly threatened by the proposed industrial expansion. I can confirm, should this redesignation, rezoning, and plan amendment be approved, my partner and I will move somewhere outside of St. John. The thought of leaving the place I envisioned raising a family in the same community I grew up in and appreciate is heartbreaking. We've already heard that neighbors are losing sleep and experiencing stress-related health issues. That's not surprising, given the amount of stress that they are under. Industrial development brings more than just jobs. It brings noise, traffic, light pollution, environmental degradation, and so on. For those of us who have chosen to live outside the urban core, specifically for the peace and connection to nature, this expansion could undo the very foundation of why we are here in the first place. I wasn't originally going to speak. I don't consider myself a public speaker. But after last meeting, I was reminded that advocacy is at the heart of my work. Whether I'm fighting for housing, for addiction support, or for mental health resources in the St. John area. And if I can advocate for others professionally, I owe it to myself and my community to speak up personally too. When I say community, I mean the greater St. John area. Laurenville is a unique and cherished part of it, a place that offers not just beauty, but peace, space, and history. Locals and visitors alike value this coastal stretch for the calm it offers and the connection to nature it provides. Let us keep our connection to nature and the exact thing that allows us to disconnect at the end of a workday. Rather than expanding industry into this space, we should be looking at ways to build on what we already have. I strongly support the idea raised by other residents, investing in tourism and recreation instead of industrialization. I worked for 3 years in a satellite office at the corner of Duke and Prince William in a historic building often visited by tourists. A recurring comment we heard: visitors love St. John, but wish there was more natural excursions and cultural experiences available within the city. Many ended up leaving for Alma or St. Martin's to find what they were looking for. outdoor adventure, nature, and history. We already have everything we need in Laurenville. Growing up, I fished from the head of the marsh, rode ATVs through the backwoods, built tree forts with my friends, and learned to appreciate the close-knit community I was lucky enough to be raised in. Now at almost 28 years old, I live next to the water. I have no complaints about that. My partner is an avid hunter who values having his hunting blind just a few kilometers from home. I share this small, peaceful community with colleagues and clients alike who also cherish the quiet and love the natural surroundings. This environment isn't just a backdrop, it's part of our daily lives and our well-being. We should be welcoming visitors to experience this way of life, not paving it over for a handful of jobs. We have a real opportunity to develop a sustainable tourism strategy, one that honors our maritime heritage, celebrates our Irish roots, and protects this land for future generations. Laurenville offers something rare, a peaceful coastal village within city limits. That's an asset, not an obstacle. Once that piece is gone, we can't get it back. And for what? More trucks, more noise, pollution, jobs. I appreciate you for listening. When placing your vote, I urge you to consider the long-term impact this expansion would have, not just on the land, but on the people who depend on it for their mental health, their history, and their future.
Thank you. Okay. Any more Laurenville speakers? Come on down. Give us your name and your address,
My
please.
name is Blake Palmer, and I
Blake
live at
Palmer.
2770 Laurenville Road. I would just like to go on record as saying I'm strongly opposed to this for the same reasons that everybody in Laurenville is opposed to this. Environmental, we're all on a well.
All right.
That's all I'd like to say.
Thank you, Mr. Palmer. Any more Laurenville speakers? Come on down, give us your name and address.
Jenna Petrie, 2707 Laurenville Road.
Yep.
I'm not a very well public speaker, but I just had a brief reading.
Sure.
What if there's a fire? We do not have a fire station. The nearest station is 13 kilometers away. If there is a fire, our community will be trapped. There will be industry surrounding us. If this rezoning goes through, we will be in danger. Councillors, please don't put our community in harm's way. Please do not rezone Spruce Lake Heavy Industrial Park. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenna, for that. I'll take the next speaker for Laurenville. Laurenville, come on down. I want you to give us your name and your address.
Council, Mayor. My name is Bruce Martin. I live at 1171 Laurenville Road. I also have a property on Point Road, 210 Point Road. Martins are natives of Laurenville, but my mother was a Ferguson. Her mother was a McCaver. And we go right back to 1860, that time when we all come from Scotland and Ireland, the Fergusons, McCavers. I also have a couple properties in the Spruce Lake Industrial Park. 155 King William Road, I have a sand and gravel and topsoil operation. I have a workshop at 331 King William Road. I network with a lot of companies, businesses in the park. It's a great thing. I get my fuel at the Irving. I get my truck repair work done right on Galbraith Place. Inspections of my trucks. I network with a lot of companies. And I'm not against the expansion. But I really like the way Laurenville is now. And they should be separate. I love being in the industrial park, but I love living in Laurenville. And they should be a good distance apart. I haven't been as active as I should have been with the community, but that's my opinion. Thank you.
Let me get my speaker on. Thank you. Hold on for 1 second, Mr. Martin. Yeah, we got a question over here for you. Councillor Ogden has a question for you.
Hi, Bruce. Do you think there's a middle ground here? we seem to be so divided. Do you think, and the people of Laurenville have been severely mistreated since 1969, 70. I was in class with all those kids. Do you think there's a middle ground here?
Middle ground? Well, when I was 9 years old, they expropriated our land. And the Driscolls and Wires, they found land and they moved their houses. We didn't find any land, and we moved this city line, the west side. And it was a great place to grow up. But in 1980, I moved back. And I don't take it for granted. I have a good friend that comes to my place and takes jugs of water home for his dog. And I have visitors that never had a cup of tea like they have at my place. And I don't want that to be ruined. That things we take for granted every morning before I go to work, I take advantage of looking out over the bay. I've been doing that since 1980. I never take it for granted. That community, the way I want it to stay. And I'm for an expansion, but keep it away from our little community. And what the safe distance is, I say, like, I haven't been active enough to know all the details, but you've heard them all the last couple of weeks. And,
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Bruce.
All right. Take the next speaker from Laurenville. I'm going to ask 3 times for the speakers from Laurenville. I want to make sure that Laurenville has been heard.
Hello.
Hi.
I am Barbara Gilliland from 1045 Laurenville Road. I just have a few questions here, quite a few. I will read till you tell me my time is up. Spruce Lake Industrial Park Project unanswered questions and unaddressed issues. Number 1, what alternatives were considered for how to expand Spruce Lake Industrial Park, or indeed to develop another park in another location? 2, what is the business plan for this project? 3, where is the cost and benefit analysis for this project? 4, what are the financial costs and where is the money coming from to develop the gravel paths? A, note cost estimates received from RDC on December 24, 2024. B, probably from developers. 5, what is the timing to install the infrastructure to support the park? 6, what are the projected servicing costs and where is the money coming from? Note, servicing cost estimates received from RDC on December 24th, 2024. Number 7, where is the rest of the plan other than clearing trees and backfilling? 8, is there an industry committed and ready to move in? 9, the initial timing to develop the land was September 2024. What is the timing now to create the gravel paths? 10, how will the city manage and protect the natural areas and wetlands for future generations? 11, what are the plans for protecting and creating an area where community and industry can thrive? 12, how will the city address the community concerns? Recommendations to PAC, not compiled with or completed. Number 13, that PAC request Common Council to direct the project proponents to conduct an environmental impact assessment on the land subject to the attached bylaw amendments to determine their suitability for industrial development or to remain in their natural state. 14, that the Planning Advisory Committee request Common Council to postpone adoption of the attached bylaw amendments until 1, A comprehensive EIA has been undertaken on these lands and confirmed their suitability for industrial development. And 2, other alternatives for expanding Spruce Lake Industrial Park have been fully explored and explained. 15, that the Planning Advisory Committee request Common Council to direct the project proponents to advise what impact, if any, buffer zones around the Birchall Wind Project have had in limiting alternatives for expansion of the Spruce Lake Industrial Park. 16, that the Planning Advisory Committee advise Common Council that the community of Laurenville has no objection to the construction of development-ready gravel pads on the 35-4 AC of city-owned properties, and PD numbers are here, that are not wetland and currently within the municipal plan heavy industrial designation on future land use map, Schedule B, and the primary development area, as illustrated on Schedule A. Note, has since been determined that these areas contain wetland. Key facts and unanswered questions. Number 17, why has there not been a more comprehensive community-wide review and solicitation for public input when the proposed changes to the municipal plan are so significantly different and not in alignment with the municipal plan? 18, why is the council content to permit locating volatile heavy industry such as hydrogen ammonia processing beside an upstream of a residential community that relies entirely on groundwater wells for potable water? 19, why hasn't an objective estimate of projected heavy industrial land needs based on legitimate market survey been undertaken instead of relying on an outdated inventory of city-owned land? 20, where is the justification for needing an additional 1,000 acres of heavy industrial land? And 20, where is the justification for needing an additional 1,000 acres of heavy industrial land designation along King William Road, in addition to the 440 acres that presently exist? 21, why designate land south and east of Marsh Brook behind residents to heavy industrial when city staff has reported that is at such a grade that development is unlikely? 22, why wasn't the environmental impact assessment conducted on the entire 1,640 acres of land rather than only on the Phase 1 project parcels for 300 acres of development-ready pads? 23, why are amendments being voted on before full ecological and hydrological data for the site is available? 24, why did the city not require a land use compatibility study for the zoning change, as is standard in jurisdiction like Toronto and Hamilton? The city appears to be confusing a technical risk review with land use planning due diligence. 25, how can council justify approving a zone that allows dozens of heavy industrial uses as of right without requiring a full public compatibility study? In the current plan, only specific uses would automatically require a risk assessment. 26, what precedent is there in New Brunswick or Atlantic Canada for permitting hydrogen ammonia processing within 500 meters of residential properties? 27, will the city commit to a water supply source assessment and hydrogeological assessment that includes risks of chemical migration, groundwater drawdown, and saltwater intrusion? Such a study is readily available, relatively inexpensive considering the cost of developing the land, and is an important step to protect drinking water of families who reside downhill from the proposed development. 28, how will the city protect residents if either groundwater monitoring systems detect a contaminant, or if residential water wells become contaminated or depleted? Are there emergency water plans or compensation guarantees for Laurenville residents? Who will be legally and financially responsible? 29, what is the city's plan should one or more residents become sick or ill from drinking contaminated groundwater? 30, What protections are in place for private well owners if the infilling of wetlands alters the local groundwater table and shallow wells dry up? 31, how many private groundwater wells exist within 1 kilometer of the proposed industrial zone boundary? 37, how will the city detect and respond to slow contamination of the aquifer if it occurs outside of the monitoring well network? For example, saltwater intrusion from modified and interrupted groundwater flows associated with wetland infilling. 33, how can the city proceed with land designation and rezoning while the EIA is ongoing and council has no idea what, if any, mitigations might be imposed or even if the EIA will be approved? Does this not indicate that the EIA process is a rubber stamp, lacks teeth, and highlights concerns expressed about the deficiencies in this entire process? 34, was the information about the 64-acre hydrogen ammonia facility disclosed to all councillors prior to the first public hearing? 35, why was key information shared by a councillor in a public blog post later removed? And is councillor operating under any non-disclosure agreements with private companies?
Can I answer that, Your Worship?
No, that's good. No, that's good. That's good. Do you want to wrap it up there, Barbara? We're at 9 minutes now.
Okay.
Hello. I need to, yeah. What we need, the person at the mic is the only speaker that we want to hear from. So back to you, Barbara. You've got another minute if you want to finish up your questions.
Minute?
You do? If you aren't going to be respectful, we'll have to ask you to leave. We'll have to ask you to leave. We'll have to ask you to leave. What? Nobody, we're not asking you to come up here and criticize the councillors. We're asking you to come up here and we're asking you to give us the reasons. Barbara, I'm going to give you that one other minute to finish off. You've got 40 questions or whatever it is. Let's wrap it up, and then because you've got a large scope
I don't
there.
think I was criticizing anyone.
Keep going. You got
going?
another minute.
36, what emergency evacuation plan exists for a hydrogen-related fire or explosion affecting the Laurenville community? 37, how is the public hearing process fair when the mayor publicly discouraged residents from raising environmental concerns? 38, is it a conflict of interest that 2 of the council members voting on the proposals are also board members of St. John Industrial Park? 39, is it a conflict of interest that council as a co-proponent of the project is also the entity charged with making the decision whether to approve or deny the proposed municipal plan and zoning bylaw amendments? 40, is the consultant for the project is in conflict of interest when preparing the EIA report? 41, who in the Laurenville community was surveyed and by the proponent if they embraced this project as it was reported in the EIA registration document? Where did this information come from? 42, who will be responsible for maintaining the tree buffer on public land next to residential properties? 43, what if no tree buffer exists between a property in the 150-meter area to be designated park and natural area? 44, what is the plan to mitigate edge effects, e.g. wind, sun damage, and preserve the ecological function of the proposed 150-meter tree buffer, particularly due to the compromised health of trees in the buffer due to the hydrological fragmentation of wetland? 45, how can Laurenville residents, or anyone for that matter, have faith that the New Brunswick Department of Environment will be able to enforce environmental rules in the future when agents acting for the co-proponent, in the case RDC, violated the conditions of their WAWA permit issued by NBDELG? 46, how can Laurenville residents or any other citizens have faith that the City of St. John will be good environmental stewards when they continue to dump on their own lands for months, directing sediment into an adjacent stream without any control measures in place, or that the current planning application of the city is deciding to destroy over 1,000 acres of natural area forest, wetlands, and watercourses? 47, why has it been 54 years since this land was expropriated and nothing yet has been developed? 48, why was the land never returned after a reasonable amount of time when none of the planning development materialized? 49, what is the reason not to protect this land as natural area now in 2025 when there is so much more information available about the dangers of various agents of pollution and environmental benefits conferred by the wetlands and natural areas? 50, does the Provincial Department of Natural Resources believe putting heavy industry on Crown land next to a residential community is managing these lands in the best interest of the people of New Brunswick?
Barbara, how many more questions have you got? I've got you like 12 minutes here.
51, and then there's another section for someone else. 51, what is the plan for compensation for any wetlands destroyed by this project?
Perfect. Thank you, Barbara. Okay, so what we're going to do. Yeah. So what will happen here is that when we close out the public hearing, which is all of the nays, all of the yays, this team has an opportunity to then ask questions of staff. Some of those questions we have those captured already. I read a lot of the ones that you've read as well. And a lot of the answers, some of the answers are in the kit. Some of the questions aren't for the city, but we will get to there. But that's after we close the public hearing. So I will now call for the next speaker. If there's anyone here from Laurenville who would like to make a point other than the 51 points that Barbara's made, and Barbara, you have a comprehensive list there, but we're looking for something different to add to this list. Take your name and your address.
Adam Wilkins. I live at 24 McGuire Drive in Laurenville. So I'm going to share a quote from Councillor Norton from after the first public hearing that I completely agree with. Our path forward must be guided by transparency, respect, and unity. However, from my perspective as a community member and also the co-chair of the task force, there has been an absolute lack of transparency, respect, and unity from the city and the province, all of which has been on public display for everyone to see. If a proposed project is so amazing, so generationally transformative, and so without risks, then shouldn't the project sell itself? Shouldn't you all not have to work so hard to sell it? Shouldn't the director not feel the need to author a 100-page report that goes out of its way to purposely deceive, disparage, and discredit Laurenville and the members of the task force? Likewise, shouldn't this director not feel the need to spend...
Adam, I can't have you speaking like that about our staff. So,
I was the co-chair of the task force. This is the experience that happened.
well, that may be so, but you're in the council chambers now, and what we're asking for is land use.
I'm going to keep speaking, okay?
Well, I don't want you bad-mouthing our staff.
I'm not bad-mouthing of the staff at all.
That sounds like that to me. That sounds like that to me. Okay, continue.
Other people said that at the first meeting and no one called them out.
Well, you know what? It's time that I do that. I didn't realize it was going to go on for 3 nights and I was going to have to listen to 3 nights of it. If it's happened initially, you're right. It's on me and I should have done that. Absolutely.
And if he got the opportunity to get up and be disrespectful and put out a report to that, then we have to call that out because that's not fair.
You got 9 minutes left.
Shouldn't this director not feel the need to spend 27 minutes proselytizing in a condescending and disingenuous fashion to council, guiding your hand? You all know the history and context, so I won't go over all of that. But there's been poor communication and biased perspectives from city staff, councillors, Dillon Consulting in the province, and an EIA process that's mediocre at best. And as of May 20th, the Minister of Environment recused himself from the EIA decision process due to conflict of interest. If the city's main goal is to get this project over the goal line, then wouldn't actually living by buzzwords of transparency, respect, and unity earn more trust and help your goal? Instead, deception, disrespect, and division was employed to further this project. And people are surprised at the level of pushback. The task force was the perfect opportunity for transparency, respect, and unity. However, it was just a means to an end. From the very first in-person meeting on November 19th, it was clear that the city had no real interest in serious and honest engagement with the community. It was simply a tactic to cool the temperature and allow for optics of due process, with no real regard for what the community thinks. When we received the minutes at the second meeting and contested them as they didn't accurately represent what was talked about, we were basically dismissed by the other co-chair. From there, the meetings followed a script of the city checking things off their list with very superficial engagement. Offers and statements were made from the city side only for them to be changed at subsequent meetings. We can only assume by directives from people higher up. We were talked at, not with. And the condescending attitude we experienced was sad and indicative of the approach the city has resorted to with this process. Minutes and agendas were often sent the day before, sometimes only after we emailed to remind and request. And throughout the entire task force process, the other co-chair often took days to weeks to respond to emails, and many important emails just outright did not respond to. At one point, the task force meetings had completed and had been weeks without a reply to an important email. I called the co-chair where they informed me that they had not been emailing back because of their concerns for right to information issues. But they never reached out to call me in the first place. What kind of communication, transparency, respect, and unity is that? We were told many things that were completely fabricated or purposely misrepresented. Very rarely was there any real honesty and meaningful engagement. We were told the tender for clearing and grubbing was canceled because of pushback from the Laurenville community, when it was in fact canceled well before the task force process even started. There were veiled threats of other provinces were doing in respect to land development, and we should basically be happy we get the chance to be part of the task force, even if it was a complete sham. We were assured multiple times that this proposal would be going back to PAC. Then the following meeting, we were told it would not be. Meetings often went very late and topics on the agenda were not covered and thus pushed ahead to the next meeting. We were assured multiple times that there would be room for additional meetings in order to have all the topics covered and have all the questions and concerns addressed. However, at the last meeting, we were informed that there would be no more meetings, and this was it. At this last meeting, we were also asked how we wanted to the report presented. We responded that we wanted it presented to the entire community of Laurenville in Laurenville, and we were told that that could be done. Weeks later, we were told no, that could not be done. The city would only meet uptown and with 10 members of the task force. We asked multiple times for minutes from the final meeting. We received them over 2 months later at a contentious meeting uptown that lasted 5 hours until nearly midnight, where we received the report. The report we were presented was missing pages, maps, figures, and in draft form. Meanwhile, all of the missing maps, figures were on screens as a slide presentation. The following day, an updated draft version of the report was posted online as edits continued to be made up until just before the first public hearing. We repeatedly suggested a new designation and zoning be created as medium industry, which was favorably heard by city staff. We suggested a larger tree buffer. We suggested residential developments, as this brings more tax revenue than industry, and fair taxation for industry has yet to be achieved. Yet here we are with this proposal that's going to magically turn the city around. And none of these things that we suggest were in the report that Mr. Dobbelstein presented. The report offers a positive spin on everything, as if all questions and concerns were addressed, as Barb and more people have still questions to ask. And that it was a great experience, and there's no real issues left, all while also getting in some strategic and pointed disparaging comments towards Laurenville. It even promoted a buffer of 50 times King Square, a head-scratching way to describe a buffer's width by actually describing its length. We were shocked to learn that city staff and council would actually allow such a biased, disingenuous, and disparaging report to be released publicly. It's actually quite sad how much was purposely left out of the task force minutes and the generated report. Even more sad was taking the opportunity to purposely distort and misrepresent what was said at the task force meetings. The city has attempted to control the narrative of this process the entire time. If the city has to employ deception, disrespect, and division to get something accomplished, what does that say about the project itself? What does it say about the city as a municipality? How would a community ever feel anything but slighted or less than? The fact that 2 councillors sit on the Industrial Park Board and another councillor blogs about their support for expansion, while also simultaneously leaking news that a hydrogen ammonia plant is coming. Do you want to see the screen grab of your blog that you had leaked?
What screen grab do you want to show?
Councillor?
The one where I changed what the piece of the part was that I thought was something different?
Yeah, Councillor Harris.
I think you have to turn on your mic if you want to speak.
No.
You just say things as true. No proof.
Okay, we got to get back to
There's screen
this.
grabs of your blog where you leaked the
Adam, did you
ammonia-
want to continue at the
I
mic?
do, but do I have to?
Okay. Councillor Harris. What? Councillor Harris. Do you want to just?
I do. I'm
finish
sorry.
this?
There's someone yelling in my ear, so I'm just don't.
Yeah, you're yelling at RG. He's yelling in yours. Let's continue then.
Am I yelling?
Let's go. You got another 4 minutes left.
You would call that yelling?
I'm listening to. I've listed what we've already heard. What you're telling us, we've heard that. I've listed that in the beginning. So if you want to continue, you said you're not going to stop. Continue.
Leak to the ammonia plant is just hammers home that process is flawed from the start, built on false pretenses. Even a few hours prior to the May 20th meeting, Laurenville community members spoke with Premier Holt and Minister Hickey at the Trade and Convention Centre and directly asked Premier Holt if Councillor Harris' blog remarks that her team endorsed this project, to which she replied, absolutely not accurate info. Premier Holt also said she spoke with the mayor earlier in that day and said that this proposal needs more time for review. Additionally, we were told that the GM of St. John Industrial Parks asked current tenants of the existing industrial park to send in letters of support on the condition that they are strictly forbidden to talk about this publicly. How is that fair? If the land transfer for $1 from the province is contingent on being approved for heavy industrial use at maximum footprint, then how is this process ever fair from the start? If this proposal is such a hard decision for city staff and councillors, as has been said multiple times, doesn't this indicate an obvious and substantial negative impact to someone, being Laurenville? Shouldn't more time be taken to find an actual real balance? Laurenville has been set up to be the ultimate sacrifice, so the city and province can try for the umpteenth time to demonstrate how trickle-down economics don't actually work. Sure, you preach about the importance of the economy, but the economy doesn't matter if you don't actually have and look after the people needed to drive it. If anyone took the time to drive through Laurenville, they'd see that nearly every single household has a sign up in their window protesting this proposal as it currently stands. There are signs throughout St. John, Grand Bay, Westfield, Rossay, Quispamsis, and beyond, and even further on social media. We have a petition signed by nearly 100% of Laurenville residents opposing this proposal as it currently stands, and our original petition currently sits at nearly 4,500 signatures, significantly more than the number of votes received by all of the ward councillors in front of me. The goal of a municipality is to serve its citizens by providing essential services, promoting development, and ensuring good governance. The city's own goals include fostering a vibrant and diverse economy, protecting the environment, ensuring affordability for residents, and attracting and retaining people and businesses. If we review the 14 strategic objectives on the city's website, you'll find that the top 3 are in order: grow the property tax base, grow the population, and number 3, protect the environment. Number 14 is focused on continuously improving. This is the last one. Focus on continuously improving as a high-performance public service organization. It's quite apparent that protecting the environment should be number 14 on the list, and very obvious why being a high-performance public service is listed last. The city used every available resource, bylaw, and regulation to not allow Irving to destroy part of Holistic Park, yet none of the same approaches seem to apply to Laurenville. Why is Laurenville different? Why must it be sacrificed? Why do the people of Laurenville not seem to matter to the city of St. John? We were hopeful that a task force process would allow for real, honest, meaningful engagement. We asked lots of great questions, made informed suggestions, presented valid concerns, and offered alternative options, yet none of that made the report. Instead, we were painted as obstinate, publicly disparaged, and made to feel like we were less than, out of sight, out of mind. Sure, there needs to be balance. That's what we're fighting for. But finding balance in a broken and disingenuous system is just a zero-sum game. We are hopeful that our words, our passion, and how we've been negatively treated has been heard and will allow for the opportunity for more discussion, to have our 70-plus unanswered questions answered, and have a path forward guided by real transparency, real respect, and real unity. And this is from the city's website and a press release. Small city, big heart. This phrase encapsulates the essence of our community, a warm, welcoming spirit, and our dedication to unity, growth, and environmental stewardship. At the core of this new brand is a promise. We pledge to put our hearts, energy, and humanity into everything we do. Our commitment is to work tirelessly with residents, business, organizations, and partners to make the city of St. John an even better place to live and work, grow, and prosper. We promise to maintain transparency and genuineness in all of our interactions, promote collaboration and inclusivity, exhibit forward thinking and industriousness, and remain helpful and welcoming to all who engage with us. Over the past 3 meetings and 11 months, does it sound like Laurenville has afforded that kind of experience for those words that would result from those words? I certainly don't feel that way, and I don't think anyone in this room, watching online, or anyone in our community or associated with Laurenville feel any of that. All we're asking for is to be treated more fairly, something that hasn't happened in 50-plus years. This needs to be scrapped and restarted. Please remember to put your hearts, energy, and humanity into everything you do, including this vote.
Thank you. Okay, I'll take the next speaker that would like to speak. Is there anyone left from Laurenville before I ask for people who are not from Laurenville to speak? Anyone in the outer chambers that needs to come in? You can pull that mic down. Just give us your
I know, I'm short.
Give us your name and your address.
I prepared a speech, but it already covers a lot of the points that you guys have already noted. So I'm not going to speak my speech, but I'm up here for the public record. My name is Mary Wilson. I live in 1527 Laurenville Road, and I'm just up here for the public records for my opposition for the industrial Spruce Lake expansion project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Take the next speaker.
Hi, Emma Palmer, Laurenville. I was reading through the municipal plan today and just took note of a few things, specifically like policy NE1, NE8, NE10, NE11, NE12, especially NE20, NE22, NE26, and NE30. And then I would just like to say, if it does go through, I hope that there's plans for flooding and for all of our wells, because the city floods constantly. And that we have heard so many times that this is a once-in-a-generation opportunity for development, but how about we use it as a once-in-a-generation opportunity to save wetlands and forests instead? Thank you.
Before you go, can I catch your name again? Emma Palmer. Emma Palmer. Just keeping a running list here. Okay, I'll take the next speaker from Laurenville. Any more speakers out in the outer chamber from Laurenville who'd like to speak? Asking twice if there's anyone in here, but more specifically outside, who would like to speak if you're from Laurenville. Asking the third time for Laurenville speakers. I want to make sure that Laurenville's been heard directly. All right, anybody else who'd like to speak? Get you to give us your name and your address.
Sabine Jurgens,
Oh,
and I
Sabine.
live in Quispamsis. So I'm not from Laurenville, but what's motivating me to come up and speak to you, Mayor, and councillors is the health of the community, and I also have a really deep concern for the environment. So I see that the buffer zones have already been addressed, so I won't address that, but there's a couple of other areas that I thought I'd speak about for just a couple of minutes. One of them is about the environmental assessment impact. It's currently underway, and I think it was already mentioned, it only has been assessed for like 464 acres of the site, and there's like 1,100 acres that were not included in this assessment. So I feel that this is, like a fragmented approach, and I would, appreciate if it would include the entire footprint of what's being proposed to be developed, because ecosystems are not fragmented in this way. They're complex and they're connected, and they need to be assessed as such. So that was one of my points. I would ask the city to please consider the entire footprint when they're assessing the environmental impacts. The other, I don't know if it's been discussed about the buffers to the water courses. My understanding is there's wetlands that are being infilled, and then there's water courses running through, and there's buffers to these water courses, the brooks and the streams, and then downstream from that are the salt marshes, otherwise known as provincially significant wetlands. So the proposal is, as I understand it, to reduce the buffers to these water courses to just 15 meters. And the current New Brunswick standard is 30 meters. So I just thought I'd bring that to attention. So I think 15 meters is more like a cosmetic buffer. It really doesn't do what a buffer is meant to do, like which would be to sort of grab the sediments and pollutants and runoff before these things reach the waterways. And also they kind of prevent erosion and flood risk. And ultimately they also impact the wells downstream and the salt marshes. So the buffers to the waterways is an issue, I think. And so I just wanted to also talk about upstream from the waterways, of course, is the wetland. And all upstream wetlands within the proposed development area should remain protected and untouched unless it can be demonstrated through rigorous, transparent assessment based on relevant measurements, hydrological data, and scientific expertise that their removal will cause no adverse impacts to the community drinking water, downstream watercourses, or the salt marshes. So these wetlands are not isolated features, they're integral to the health of the local watershed. So any decision to alter or destroy them must be backed by clear, independent evidence, not assumptions or incomplete assessments. So then, in conclusion, this plan exposes St. John, this plan of development exposes St. John to like environmental risk, social risk, legal risk, the 150-meter buffer, a piecemeal EIA, and the 15-meter buffers from the watercourses are not defensible, not scientifically or ethically, or not even under your own municipal plan. And if the city is serious about protecting people and drinking water and the environment, then it should consider increasing the watercourse buffers, also the buffers from industry and homes, and require a single EIA to evaluate the entire area of land. So I just hope that this plan isn't going to be like fast-tracked too quick, and because like once it's done, it can't be undone. I just hope you will consider really carefully and do the right thing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sabine, for being here. Okay, I'll take the next speaker, please. Come on down and give us your name and your address.
Hi, my name's John Baird. I grew up in Laurenville. I'm presently living in Grand Bay, Westfield, and hope to move back to Laurenville one day. I'm continuing on with the questions that Barb didn't finish. Oh, sorry. Additional questions related to industrial water supply. 52, what is the current annual industrial water consumption from the Spruce Lake water system? 53, has anyone studied and projected maximum annual capacity from the Spruce Lake water system, and if so, what is it? 54, has anyone studied and projected future consumption from both current users of Spruce Lake water system, Irving Pulp and Paper, and Colson's Cove Generating Station? And if so, what is it? 55, is there enough projected excess capacity in the Spruce Lake water system to support other users of the system, and how much is it? 56, has any study been done to predict future industrial water consumption needs of potential industries interested in locating in Spruce Lake Industrial Park? Example, data processing centers and hydrogen processing facilities. 57, is there enough industrial water available to support these types of industries? 58, in New Brunswick, water and sewage utilities are required to be user pay. Will the raw water supplied from Spruce Lake water system follow this principle? Will the users of the water be responsible for the full cost of supplying the water, or will there be some public subsidy involved? 59, what is the current arrangement for covering the cost of supplying industrial water from Spruce Lake water system to Irving Pulp and Paper and Colson's Cove Generating Station? 60, do the users pay the full amount of annual electricity cost to pump water from the Musquash system into the Spruce Lake system? 61, do the users pay for the full cost of maintaining, repairing, replacing, and operating their transmission pipelines, access structures, and other ancillary equipment, valves, screens, couplings necessary to supply industrial water from the Spruce Lake system to their manufacturing facilities? 62, do the users cover any of the costs for operation and maintenance of the Musquash system, including maintenance and upkeep of the various dams, reservoirs, pipelines, roadways, and the pumping station necessary to supply water to the Spruce Lake water system. 63, who will assume the risk for non-supply of industrial water in the event of excess draw in the system, excessive dry weather, or failure of a large dam due to age, extreme wet weather, or human error? 64, are the users of the system responsible to fully reimburse expenses of capital improvement projects made to the Spruce Lake water system undertaken by the City of St. John and/or New Brunswick Department of Natural Resources? 65, has anyone studied and projected future servicing costs in Spruce Lake Industrial Park for providing raw industrial water to future tenants? 66, who will be responsible to cover these servicing costs? 67, related to the industrial water questions, has anyone studied and confirmed the ability of the New Brunswick electrical grid to meet additional demands for electricity for new high-consumption users like data centers and hydrogen processing facilities without causing rate hikes to current consumers? And did you know that 68, the 4 heavy industrial properties in the Spruce Lake Industrial Park take up 20% of the land and yield $116,139 in taxes? That's $876 per acre. 69, that residential properties from Stinson Brook to Millbrook yield $166,911 in taxes. That's $1,999 per acre. 70, that the 2,478 acre windmill property north of King William Road paid $130,571.93 in taxes in 2024. That's at $52.68 per acre. And 71, that the taxes on the 2,478 acre windmill property were reduced to $86,275.17 in 2025 to now be $34.82 per acre. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Okay, I'll take the next speaker, please. Come on down. If it's somebody in the back row there. Yeah, come on down. Don't rush. We're good. Okay, I'll get you to give us your name and your address, please.
All right, my name is Full Cohen, Christopher hyphen James Full Cohen Gablin, live at 138 Elliott Row, Uptown, St. John. I'd like to remind you all that I am 100% against the expansion of the Spruce Grove Industrial Park.
I need you to spell your name.
Oh,
we
it's
didn't catch the name.
CHRISTO.
Christopher?
Yes.
What's the last name?
Gamblin.
Gamblin? Yeah, okay. We've got it. Go ahead.
I'm 100% against the expansion of the Spruce Grove Industrial Park. As you can see, of course, this would also, the expansion of it would increase defective genes and mental disorders from the carbon pollution that's being emitted from the construction of this, the expansion of the industrial park. For people breathe in tons of carbon pollution every day, which also genetically mutates our DNA. And DNA is the book of life, and this has been a grave concern since the first G20 summit in Japan on the 27th September 1999, when we were declared post-human in post-human stage. And the last human being on DNA record was born, and by the world's biggest think tank, was born on the 27th of September 1960 in the outback of Australia. My greatest concern, since biodigital convergence and the fourth industrial revolution by Yuval Noah Harari, Klaus Schwab's right-hand man with the World Economic Forum. And expansion of this would be in violation of the Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change and in direct violation of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals when it comes to bringing pollution levels down to what it was back in 1960. And we are about to enter, and if this goes ahead, we are about to enter the 6th mass extinction where pretty much all of nature and all animal life is being wiped off the face of the earth, which would also cause a ripple effect, which would cause depopulation to accelerate to unnecessary levels that we do not need and do not want. After all, climate pollution has been getting worse over the years because increase in traffic over the years, increase in carbon pollution due to having to get up, go to work all the time, to work the land, which because of expansions and new creations of industrial parks all over the world like this, permafrost is melting all over the world, which is releasing a fungi, which is affecting our lungs directly. And we're not going to be able to breathe that air anymore, which means the World Health Organization will be forced to call for climate lockdowns because of this new fungi being released in the atmosphere due to increase in pollution. And this is a catastrophe that can be avoided if we decided to cut back on our consumption levels, which is called for in the Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change report from back in 1999. And if expansion of this goes ahead, well, we're in the sixth mass extinction. We're all being wiped out. And this is also increased defective genes and mental disorders, which is causing failing grades in the school system, which we do not want. And birds falling out of the sky, animals running around in circles. We don't want that.
Okay, we've got the environmental impacts of the proposed land uses, yes, on the list for sure.
And biodigital convergence, artificial intelligence should also be a concern on that list as well. Because this would also violate the United Nations Declaration of Rights for Indigenous People when it comes to their land protection. And every environmental sustainable development goal would also be violated as well, because that would increase carbon pollution. We want to bring that down because it's also a violation of the Natural Justice Act, and that's with the United Nations as well.
Okay, Councillor Radwan has a quick question for you. Will you take a question?
Yes.
Councillor Radwan, you have a quick question over there?
Yeah, Mr. Gamblin, do you have any research documentation to support anything that you just said by scientists?
The Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change report from 1999 is where I'd get my information from.
Okay.
What about the medical information that you just stated?
It's also on the World Health Organization's website as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Norton, did you have a question?
Your Worship, I just want to call a point of order. I appreciate the councillor's questions, but if you want to have an offside chat with the speaker later, looking for documentation, I would like to get on with the public hearing.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Gamblin. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome.
Thank you. Okay, I'll take the next speaker. I'll take the next speaker, please. I'll take the next speaker. Okay, the list is getting slim of new topics.
Hi, my name is Philip Gray. I'm from the east side of St. John, so I'll be quick, but thanks for having me. I just kind of had a deep concern about the proposed plan to develop a pad for future heavy industry on natural areas, including wetlands in Laurenville. We're in the midst of a global climate crisis, and every decision we make will either help or hurt that. Wetlands aren't wastelands. They're one of the most valuable things to our ecosystem on the planet. They filter out water, they prevent flooding, they store carbon, they support biodiversity. That's an opinion, but science. We have a lot of decades of knowledge and research that shows how crucial they are, and I know you guys have heard lots about that. I'm just wondering why we're considering infilling wetlands. Is the promise of industrial development really worth that irreversible damage it could cause and that it will cause? Is short-term economic gain more important than the long-term health of the environment and community? I know that the city has stated that the potential removal of any trees or infilling of non-PSW wetlands will only be done if there is a clear business case to do so. But I have to ask, how in the world can a business case justify destroying wetlands? How can we talk about clear business benefits while ignoring the clear environmental costs? There's no spreadsheet that can measure the loss of habitat, the increased risk of flooding, or the long-term damage to the climate. There is no business case that makes this okay. I understand that there may be a need for industrial growth, but that need should never be met at the cost of the most sensitive and essential natural areas. Development should be thoughtful, strategic, and sustainable. It should not come at the expense of ecosystems, and that can't be replaced. Where I grew up, we also have wetlands. There's ongoing efforts to protect the watershed there, planting trees, sustainable farm projects, things of that nature. And it's all because we understand how vital these natural systems are. We've learned that working with nature and not against it leads to stronger, healthier communities. I may not have been raised in Laurenville, but I stand with this community in saying these wetlands matter. They matter to the people who live there. They matter to the wildlife that depend on them. They matter to the health of that region. When we take away wetlands, we destroy ecosystems. When we add heavy industry, we change the very way of life for people who call Laurenville home, and that's not a trade-off that we should accept. I urge you to please reconsider. Listen to the science, listen to the community. Let's find a solution that protects both our economy and our environment. And thank you very much for your time today, everybody.
I'll take the next speaker, please.
I didn't prepare anything, but I did want it on record. My name is Jennifer Gormley.
Jennifer Gormley?
Yep. I'm
Yep.
here with my husband, Stephen. We live at 2680 Laurenville Road.
Laurenville Road, okay.
Yep. And of course, we are against this. We live in Laurenville. Everybody here has pleaded their hearts out, to save our community. It's our home. I'm hoping that you've listened to everything that's been said, and I'm hoping that each of you have had a chance to even drive through Laurenville and see what we're talking about. Because if you did, you'd understand why we're passionate and why this means so much to us. So I really hope you took the time to do that, and that you understand, how much this is, it's hurting each and every one of us. We're pleading our hearts out. It feels like we're fighting for our whole livelihood down there. And it's a terrible thing to spend your time on something like that when life's so hard. And I just want to thank all the people here, that have put their time in and that have, we're pleading for this to be a no, just so we can continue on with our life. And I want to thank everybody who doesn't live in Laurenville that spoke up. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. I'll take the next speaker, please.
Hi, my name is Logan Baird of 2 Dominion Court. Thank you for allowing me to share my opposition to the Spruce Lake Industrial Park expansion this evening. This is what community and democracy looks like. However, I believe these kinds of decisions should be voted upon by community members, not left to a few that are open to industry sway, especially when there are possible conflicts of interest among its council. This is the third week of opposition with 3,500 views on YouTube between the first 2 weeks, when St. John Council meetings averaged 250 views a week. This goes to show the concerns surrounding this topic in our community. Laurenville's original mile seat name is Pissarinkle, meaning fishing village, not heavy industry village. In regard to the comment about if 150 meters is enough, then what is, with follow-up of there are homes that are only 800 meters from the Irving refinery in Champlain Heights. That doesn't make it right, and if you have the ability not to do that, then don't. Or possibly the homes were built after the refinery, which is another matter. Either way, I would recommend starting at a minimum of the municipal plan's recommendation of 1.5 kilometers. Is there really not enough land on the opposite side of the King William Road that couldn't have incorporated both the windmill project and the industrial park expansion? Possibly remove or relocate 2 windmills or develop land closer to the highway off the Birch Hill Road, adding an on-ramp to the highway, reducing the traffic congestion concerns, or provide a professional traffic impact study with mitigation measures. In the presentation, it was stated the government has been holding on to this land for 50 years and now is the time to develop. The statement only emphasizes how greedy the government has been with the citizens' land, and based on the proposed plan, how St. John Council will continue to be. Quick example, buying this land for $1, and when the residents had asked to purchase their family land back, they were refused. Data centers don't create jobs beyond the initial building phase, and the increase of use of AGI will reduce jobs further with an increased usage of fresh water and electricity, essentially killing actual life forms in favor of artificial life forms. Storage facilities don't create many jobs, but they do increase the chance of a disaster above and below ground. An example being the Woodstock Tim Hortons selling diesel-flavored beverages. This shouldn't make anyone feel comfortable regarding the safety of their well water. And is there a threshold for job creation before any company is approved? There's too much ambiguity surrounding the kinds of industry that are permitted for the EIA to make an informed decision to begin with. The only outcome from a review of the current PSWs is that their zoning should be increased as everything behind the current PSWs are uphilled. I could use Millstream as an example of an unfair assessment from the dump era. I used to monitor the water quality of the stream as a boy with my father as part of ACAP, hiking through the woods to check how polluted this once clean stream had become, instilling in me at a young age how unfair and greedy this world can be, starting in my own backyard, when we should have just been hiking or fishing Millstream. I'm sure you could say this PSW should be deemed insignificant due to the continued leaching of toxins from the dump. However, this is a result of industry and what happens when it's uphill from PSWs or wetlands in general. The consulting company used currently has legal action taken against them for a failed assessment in Woodstock related to underground storage, which I alluded to earlier. While in their Laurenville assessment, they made claims about wildlife and vegetation that wouldn't have been in season during their assessment. The mayor mentioned they know what it's like having heavy industry in their backyard, referring to AIM. My question is, are you suggesting you enjoy having AIM in your backyard and that it has enriched your life and that of your community? Or are you suggesting since you have to suffer, Laurenville should have to suffer as well? The difference is you reside in the city core where industry is expected. You want to remove people's backyards, animal habitats, and wetlands to develop industry. Every day during the clearing phase, the community will hear the destruction of their forest. I'm sure the whining of the chainsaws will sound like the Jaws theme song coming for them meter by meter, right up to 150 meters behind their homes. And as each tree is cut, a nest full of baby birds will tumble to the ground, only to have their once home crush their tiny bird skulls. Is there a plan to relocate bears, coyotes, and bobcats, or will they be shot on sight as to not slow down this rush project? Once the forest has been reduced to 150-meter strip, the remaining wildlife isn't going to have a lot to call home. This will increase the amount of animals searching for food in residents' backyards, including their family pets. When we've been instructed by St. John Council not to feed wildlife, I'm not sure if you've heard the howling and screaming a bunny or a cat makes as a coyote rips it apart limb by limb. It's quite unpleasant. I can only imagine the serenity and mental well-being this will bring to all as they sleep with a window open on a warm summer's evening. In closing, St. John Council says Laurenville is a gem in the city, and it certainly is, except their definition is based on the dollars the gem can generate, not the admiration of its beauty. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll take the next speaker, please. Next speaker, anyone out in the chambers outside that would like to speak? I'll get you to give us your name and your address, please.
All right. Can you guys hear me okay?
Pardon?
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah. Right. I didn't get you.
I'm Michael Flan.
Michael.
I live in Rossay.
What was your last name, Michael?
Flan, F-L-A-W-N.
Okay.
All right. I'd like to speak in opposition to this proposal. I'd like to draw on my background in political science and software engineering to do so. A phrase that comes to mind when I think of this project is race to the bottom. We've repeatedly been sold false promises with projects that have been shopped from municipality to municipality, seeking the most desperate community willing to trade away long-term assets for short-term and possibly ephemeral gains. And if our future tenants decide we have too many standards, they will move somewhere that doesn't have those standards. And that's the race to the bottom. Destroying several square kilometers of pristine forest and wetlands in order to satisfy possibly spurious or temporary gains of industrial development is short-sighted. How often have we, as a province and a city, been promised development that hasn't panned out? One thing that comes to mind is a Sears call center. Over $4 million in public funds were given to open a Sears call center in 2017, after having previously already spent $4.6 million supporting that company, which closed, to the surprise of no one, several months later when Sears went out of business. I also think of when NB Power spent $16 million in Florida on a thermodynamically impossible scheme to turn water into hydrogen in a way that generates electricity. When you burn hydrogen, it becomes water, so you can't do that. I ask how much public funding is going to be dedicated for the opportunity to destroy our own wetlands and forests. We are being asked to agree to a project without knowing what is actually being built, with only the hint of things like a data center. So I can only make an educated guess as a software engineer as to why there is a data center being proposed. But I'd like to restate, projects are often overly optimistic, temporary, or non-existent. The demand for data centers is generally driven by speculative investment in energy-intensive AI. Recent trends suggest this level of energy-intensive investment, aside from being ill-advised, may be unnecessary. So, for example, DeepSeek recently came out, and that uses substantially less power. And suddenly the demand for data centers as a result has gone down. Beyond that, the practical commercial utility of AI has not met with the projections. And so they, again, the demand was not panning out quite the way they were hoping. And it's not just me saying this. Alibaba chairman Joe Tsai recently suggested we are in a data center bubble and are massively overbuilding centers based on speculative demand, and that projects are beginning without guarantees on future use. Microsoft, which only last year had been spearheading one of the more ambitious data center pushes, like recommissioning 3 Mile Island nuclear facility, et cetera, has recently canceled a number of its planned projects and let multiple letters of intent expire. So I hope that they are not your client. We have the benefit of not being locked into a sunk cost fallacy right now. We can nix this project before it starts. Looking at the trend, I'm not holding my breath for this data center, nor would I be in favor of destroying old growth forest for the furtherance of energetically wasteful AI-generated slot. So this is just an example, but my point is we are contemplating irreversible destruction of our environment and recreation space for something that may be an abandoned hole in the ground in a few years. It's somewhat reminiscent of West Virginia blowing up its own mountains to extract coal. We can't build these things back when circumstances change. In 100 years, those people in West Virginia will wish that they had their mountains back. And I think that we'll be wishing we had our wetlands back a lot sooner than that. I'd like to say economic value doesn't begin and end with tourism, but that certainly is a major long-term benefit to the city, a benefit that extends beyond the short-term lifespan of industrial development. There is, economic value in being in a place that's worth living in. Cities, like unlivable cities, depopulate. Livable cities attract taxpayers, and community members. But beyond that, I don't think that, you can assign a dollar value to nature either. I mean, there is a inherent good to having access to nature in our lives. And so I think that proceeding with this would be a mistake. And I would like to echo that because this is something that has come up a bit in Rosse as well, is the provincially significant wetlands tend to occupy like a very small footprint, and then they're surrounded by wetlands that support them. They have been looking at trying to fill in everything surrounding the wetlands on the Fox Farm exit, and my understanding is because these things are so small and they've reduced it just to like the part that is water, if you fill in everything that surrounds it, that kills the wetland and is, one way to circumvent any kind of provincial restrictions on doing so. I think that there's a certain absurdity to being unable to discuss anything environmental because the EIA happens after the changes are approved. The EIA cannot happen if this is not approved. So recreation space and potential present and future value of land as a natural system is within your scope, and framing this as a net provincial impact ignores local impact. I think it's something like if you suggested, you wanted to knock down every tree in the Loyalist burial ground and turn it into firewood, trying to push that to an EIA that might say, well, the net impact isn't that, important, would be missing the point a little bit, right? That it's just not a good idea to do that. That doesn't, what you gain from that does not match what you lose. And I do think that to some degree in this process, the subtext of the way this has been discussed is that democracy is an inconvenience, that, we have to get this out of the way so that we can keep, pushing forward with this project. And, I don't think that democracy is an inconvenience. I think that, our input matters. And it seems pretty clear to me that opposition to this project is overwhelming. And especially for the people who actually live in Laurenville, and my hearts go out to them because, it just seems like they've been through a lot, and they never really had a say in the matter, and it doesn't seem like their democratic will has ever been listened to. So,
all right.
Yeah, it's framed as
you.
something that's public, that it's public interest is more important than the public opinion. I think that.
With respect, we have heard
Wetlands.
there's nothing new. Sorry, sir, but there's nothing new in what you brought us that wasn't in letters and we haven't heard before. I would ask that if there is something new, please share it, and if not, let's bring the next speaker that has something new.
I would suggest that the thing I said about the data centers is new.
We have had many letters about data centers, and you may not have read all the letters that we have. Certainly, I would say certainly the folks from Laurenville have educated us well on data centers, and yeah, we have heard lots.
Yeah, the broad strokes are similar, but I would argue that specifically the chairman of a major, tech conglomerate saying that we're in a data center.
It's up to the chair.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we have heard all that. I mean, whether it's a business case to put a data center in, that's not what we're talking about. That's up to whoever's going to put a data center in, if that's what actually end up happening. So, but I do appreciate you bringing the information about the wetlands, et cetera. But I think that's on my list. I've added a couple of things that you've mentioned as well to add to the list. So I thank you for being here.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your time, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. So I've asked the speakers, if you've come from out there, we're looking for different or new information. If you have that, bring it forward. If you want to agree with what's already been said, we've had, I think, maybe 60 some questions. So we've had a broad coverage of issues so far, but I see you've pulled the mic down. Perfect.
I'm sure.
I'll get you to give us your name and your address.
My name is Tina Rowell, and I live in Morrisdale.
Okay.
I just want to go on record to say that I am strongly opposed to heavy industry being put in Laurenville's backyard. My daughter and her family live in Laurenville, and I deeply care about their health, as I'm sure you do with your families. Have any of you seen, long ago, the Aaron Brockovich movie? Years back, that depicted the devastation that can happen to a community with heavy industry. I think a lot of us have seen that movie. Drinking water will be ruined, along with much health, bad health, disease, cancers, etc. I implore you to please, please do not let this happen in our backyard. Thank you.
Thank you, Tina, for being here. I'll take the next speaker, please. Any speakers out in the, come on down if you haven't spoken. Any people out in the foyer who would like to come in? There are some seats in here for speakers. I'll get you to give us your name and your address, please.
Thank you, Donna. My name is Data Brinanta. My address is...
Go ahead.
You're okay with the...
Well, yeah, I was going to get you to spell it, actually.
Okay. Brain, like brain, what's in your head, and Anta. My first name
And what's your
is
address
D-A.
again?
D-A-T-A. 10 Fraser Brook Road. in
Fraser
Nowijiwok.
Brook Road?
Nowijiwok.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, everyone, for giving me the opportunity to speak here, and I hope I do bring a different perspective on this that will be useful. This is a letter that I actually sent last week, so some of you probably already read this, but I'm going to read this here again. First, I'm originally from Indonesia, and I stand here in the spirit that I always try to remind myself that what I'm doing here is based on the peace and friendship. Peace in the sense that, that's why I'm wearing this, that there is a war going on at other parts of the world that's really bad. And it is through my love of St. John, I believe that St. John can take part in being a force of peace. And this is also related to Laurenville, I think. And friendship in the sense that I see St. Johners and everybody here as friends, and that's why I communicated as much as I can in a positive note here. So since my first son was born at the regional here, a little bit more than 18 years ago, I had a strong feeling that St. John is going to be my home. I grew up in Indonesia, in its massive, stinky, concrete jungle capital called Jakarta, that's currently sinking, and in 10 years, he was told that it's just going to be under the water, thanks to climate change. So I would never expect that I would call St. John and this area, this picturesque, beautiful place, home. To make a living, I drove a cab for about a year, and I got the chance to converse with St. Johners while getting a glance at their dwellings, which I found is very scenic, idyllic, beautiful beaches, wooded corners, forests, where people here are so fortunate to inhabit. And from talking to St. Johners, I feel that I shared the maritime, seafaring character that I also grew up in Indonesia. We're also maritimers, we call ourselves, which is the fascination and warmth toward foreigners coming from other ends of the oceans. Indonesians were thought that they live in a tropical paradise, and I didn't believe that until I spent about a year in Ontario to study. But when I moved here with my now ex-wife, who was actually originally from Grand Manan, I also found a little paradise. It's beautiful here. And plus, there's a winter wonderland every year here. So my ex-wife worked as a substitute teacher in several public schools here in the area. And I learned from her there's a lot of problems with poverty, drugs, violence, depression that seem to loom over here. I grew up in Indonesia surrounded by slums and extreme poverty. And throughout my younger formative years, I came to a conclusion that the free healthcare and education is the cure to those social problems. So it baffled me to see that people here still suffer from high suicide rate, child poverty, even with the presence of free healthcare and education. I asked that question, why? Why is that so? Why people here are so unhappy? So through friends here, I found that many people here went out west or north to work, what I would say, tough, physically and mentally challenging jobs in the oil fields and so on, in the hope of returning with boosted buying power, with more money to raise families back home. Sometimes the plan works, but often it also fails. It seems like the material wealth that people here got from out west, for example, gained from extractive industry, seems to not always be able to fix or mend the relationship and mental health that was sacrificed while they were away. And I start to see the pattern here where the livelihood of people, St. Johners that I love here, seems to be at the mercy of big industries. Be it the lumber and shipbuilding industry since the age of sail, to the oil refinery and pulp mill, to the tar sand of Alberta. When money decides to flow in, we prosper. But when money changes course and leaves, we are destitute. Now, this is nothing new. For decades in Indonesia, we have offered our riches and resources to attract foreign investment from the north, including Canada. There's a lot of Canadian mining companies over there that also
Can I interrupt you really quickly?
so that we can get trickles
What we're
of their
trying to
wealth.
look, excuse me.
How many minutes we have?
No, it's just that, like, we're going to try to make a decision on the land use in Laurenville. So while I appreciate, your background to your story, is there something that you'd like to add to our list of concerns as we go forward that we would like to address before we make a decision on this? So we're trying to make a list here. So if you
10
could get
minutes
there,
and
that'd be
effort.
great.
You
Yes,
don't-
I said
You don't feel I'm adding new information? Is that how it is, or?
Well, no, I've got your history, and that's all fine. But what I'm looking for is to add to my list for Laurenville
Yeah,
of
so
what your opposition
this is why I think I should bring this up, because St. John is a multicultural city, people from all over the world, and I think not many is representing people of color here. Sometimes they're hesitant to come in here. So this is why I'm telling you a little bit of this background, which does takes time, and everything takes time, including taking decision in this important Laurenville scandal.
For us to make a decision, though, what we're looking for are your objections, so that we can weigh those objections. So that's what I'm looking for.
It's
So that's
gonna
up
get
to you to
there? It's gonna
present
get
that.
there? Yeah, can I continue? Or?
Absolutely.
Okay. So
Yes.
He's going to get to the objection.
Yeah, we're looking for your objections. Oh, yes, for sure.
Okay. Yeah, it's going to get there. It's going to get there. Yeah. Okay, so we, in Indonesia, we sacrificed our piece of earth. We have nickel. Canadian companies went there, destroyed the environment in order to satisfy the feed and consumptions of here, of the north. So I'm not going to talk about this whole thing, colonial aspect of this. What I want to say is here, we don't need to do that. We don't need to destroy our nature. Canada is one of the most advanced industrialized countries in the world that belong to the groups of 7 richest countries in the world, G7. We have the know-how, the capital, and the capacity to bring prosperity with minimal destruction to people and nature. What's needed is a vision and political will to move in that directions. And I found this vision comes from communities like Laurenville and the indigenous people here who live with and steward their natural environments. So my hope is that policymakers like yourself would tune in and engage in a meaningful discussion with communities like Laurenville so that all parties can find common grounds. So this is part of the objections, if you want to say objection or criticisms. But it will not happen if there is no transparency and good faith. Secrecy is the enemy where greed and corruption build their fortress. Timing is used merely to set up a fait accompli. When that happens, the process is not of consultation and dialogue, but merely a note-taking of grievances to add a footnote to a decision that had long been prepared and schemed. So that's not a process that's beneficial for us all who live on the same earth. I know some people here still debate climate change, but back home, it's real in the form of disasters, unfortunately. So just a few minutes drive away from here, we see the same voice coming from Laurenville. Maybe from Indonesia, you don't hear the disasters, the capital is sinking, but here in Laurenville, we see people who want to save wetlands, as well as Chief Ron Tremblay, up river on the Wolastoqi, speak of the same thing, save Mother Earth. So I'm not of the opinion to stop building any industries. We still need industries to move us away from the fossil-based economy. And in the midst of the many greenwashing industries, which I would say hydrogen is part of it, to be honest, because it's basically just trying to use as much fossil fuel capacity that's left. It is important that the decisions of what these industries that are allowed is made meaningfully, democratically, and transparently, involving affected communities, as well as the indigenous people who are the original stewards of this land. So I'm just going to cut some of this. You have the technology, like I mentioned, and you also have the resources. You have the wisdom from communities, please listen to them, as well as from the indigenous people. You can be courageous by not blindly following the flow of money. You can bravely chart a course that meaningfully benefits people and the planet. So growth is not everything. Human being is everything. Nature is everything. People make money, not the other way around. Let's be willing to make extra investment or sacrifice, economic sacrifice. And sacrifice is not a bad word. If you go to church, you must understand that. For the sake of preserving the priceless wetland and building a living economy centered around the well-being of people and nature in the area. There's public transport that we can build. There's the ecotourism like that was mentioned. Let's center it to people and nature. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll take the next speaker, please. I'll take the next speaker. 7 o'clock? Okay, oh yeah, we could do that. Is there any, who's left to speak? Is there anybody we should check out in the, yeah, we're gonna just see, make sure, I don't want to miss anyone. I want to make sure that everybody gets in here for to speak. That's what I'm just finding out. Is there anyone left to speak here? No. I'll ask again if there's anyone left who would like to speak against the proposal. I want to wait till Melanie gets back in to make sure. I'll ask this group if there's anyone here left to speak against the proposal. I want to hear what Melanie says first. We'll get a list of names maybe if there's. Melanie's gone. Melanie's gone to make sure that she's checked with everyone out there. Oh, there's no one out there that wishes to speak? Okay. Yeah, there's people. Okay. So I'm asking for the final time if there's anyone here who would like to speak against the proposal for Laurenville. All right, I'm going to close the speaking against Laurenville proposed part of this public hearing. And I'm going to offer us, yeah, sorry. Well, I'm not closing the hearing, but.
No, I was going to suggest if we're closing the opposition side that we defer the public hearing to the next regular meeting of council to allow those in favor to speak and.
Good idea. So, okay. So got a motion to defer to the next council, seconded by Councillor Lowe. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. So do I have to adjourn the meeting? No, because it stays open.
Explain what just happened there? Yes, please.
Okay, so everyone who wanted to speak against the proposal has spoken. We've checked outside, we've checked inside. And so now what we're going to do is we're just going to defer that for the yays to the next meeting. So we'll end the meeting tonight. The public hearing stays open. The public hearing stays open. It's a special meeting, and yeah. So anyways,
Your worship, on point of order, anybody who's speaking from the crowd should be asked to leave.
This is a decision of council, so we'll go to June 16th for the yays. They will be up next. The hearing stays open, as we've done in the past for the past three nights that we've done it. And do I need a motion to adjourn? No, okay. Yes, we did, yeah, so we passed, yeah. Yeah, so we'll see you all on June 16th. Do I need a motion to adjourn? Jerry? Councillor Lowe, I need a motion to adjourn. Oh, he made it, okay. Councillor Stewart, all in favor? Okay. Oh yeah, he's got his light on there.
Motion to adjourn.
We got it. Okay. So you've kept a track of like some of the other.